Okay, folks, today we're going to be going over sentence types, and today we'll be covering all 4 sentence types that we've discussed this year. So simple, compound, complex, and compound complex. Now we know there are several steps for identifying sentences, and we're going to write those at the top of our page here. Step 1, we want to cross out prepositional phrases and infinitives. So anytime you're trying to identify a type of sentence, we're going to cross those things out. They are not going to help us identify our sentence. Step 2, second thing we're going to do, we're going to circle subjects and circle verbs. Okay, you might choose to identify these in different ways. Maybe circle the subjects and box the verbs. Step 3, we're going to put a star above subordinating conjunctions. And step 4, we're going to put a dot above coordinating conjunctions or semicolons. Both of those things will get a dot. Okay. We also want to make sure that we identify dependent and independent clauses. Okay, so those are the 5 things we're going to do with any type of sentence. Let's look at the first type of sentence. The first type of sentence we're looking at is a simple sentence. And a simple sentence, the formula is pretty simple. We just have one independent clause. Remember, an independent clause can stand alone. It is one complete thought with only one subject and verb. So if we look at an example, he went to the store. Okay. If we follow our steps here, we're going to cross out prepositional phrases and infinitives. To the store is a prepositional phrase. We're going to circle our subject, he, and box our verb, went. I don't see any other subjects and verbs, which means that we really only have one clause here. There are no subordinating conjunctions, no coordinating conjunctions, no semicolons, so we only have one independent clause. He went. Okay, and I'm gonna highlight my independent clauses in red. So you can kind of see there we have one independent clause, and that's a simple sentence. Okay, the next type of sentence we're gonna look at is compound. And the formula for the compound sentence is a little different. Compound sentences have one independent clause plus at least one more independent clause. They could have more than 2 independent clauses, but they have at least 2. Okay, so we know compound sentences have 2 independent clauses at least. And those 2 independent clauses are connected by either a coordinating conjunction or a semicolon. And when we see those things, we're going to put a dot above them, remember? So if we're following our steps, those need a dot above them. Now we know a semicolon is that little thing that looks like a colon and a comma. Our coordinating conjunctions we can remember by remembering fanboys. Okay, and remember the acronym FANBOYS stands for and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Okay, so anytime we see one of those, we're going to get a dot. So a compound sentence has 2 independent clauses. For example, I might say, he went to the store, comma, and he bought grapes. Okay, we see here I've got a subject, he went. I can cross that out. I've got a comma and a coordinating conjunction, another subject, and another verb, he bought. So since I have two subject-verb pairs, that tells me I have two clauses. And we see that both of these could kind of stand alone, right? He went to the store. Okay, that's one sentence. And then he bought grapes. That's another sentence. That could stand by itself too. So I have two independent clauses connected by a coordinating conjunction, which tells me this is a compound sentence. Okay, I could also write this sentence by putting a semicolon here instead. He went to the store, semicolon, he bought grapes. That would also work as a compound sentence. So compound sentence, two independent clauses. The next type we're going to talk about is a complex sentence. Okay, in a complex sentence, the formula has an independent clause, and then it has at least one dependent clause. Okay, it could have more than one dependent clause, but a complex sentence must have only one independent clause and then one or more dependent clauses. And these also will have a subordinating conjunction. Remember, we're going to find those and we're going to put stars above them. The subordinating conjunctions, remember, we don't have a great acronym to remember those, but we know they're AAA, WW, U, BBIST, okay, which stands for after, although, as, when, while, until, before, because, if, since, and that. Okay, so those are our subordinating conjunctions. We've got independent clauses in red, and I'm going to do dependent clauses in blue. Okay, so let's look at an example of a complex sentence. A complex sentence we know has one independent and one dependent. So I'm going to keep my same independent clause. He went to the store. Okay. After he cleaned. Okay, so we see here, I'm going to do my steps, cross out prepositional phrases to the store, circle subjects, he, and then my verbs would be went and cleaned. Again, I have two subject-verb pairs, which tells me that I have two different clauses, okay? And we see here we have the subordinating conjunction after. I'm going to draw a little star up there, which tells me that this second clause, after he cleaned, is a dependent clause. Okay, this first clause over here, he went to the store, that's an independent clause. Okay, so complex has one independent, one dependent. All right, the last type we're going to talk about, compound complex. Compound complex sentences sort of combine features of compound sentences and complex sentences. So just like a compound sentence, they have to have at least two independent clauses, whereas the complex only has one, compound complex has at least two. Then it has at least one dependent clause, and it could have more of any of these, okay? So it might have three independent clauses and two dependent clauses. As long as we have more than two independent clauses, it's going to be a compound complex sentence, okay? So we have at least two independent, and then we have at least one dependent. Now for these, since we have two independent and one dependent, we're going to have a coordinating conjunction or a semicolon and a subordinating conjunction. So these will have both dots and stars, okay? So let's look at an example. I might say he went to the store. And he bought grapes because he made a fruit salad. Okay, we're gonna follow our steps. First thing I do is cross out the prepositional phrase to the store. Don't see anything else to cross out. So I'm gonna find my subjects and my verbs. We have he went, he bought, and he made. Those are all my subjects and verbs. I have 3 subject-verb pairs, which tells me I probably have a compound complex sentence just because there are 3 clauses. And if we look at these clauses, we're going to first find our coordinating conjunction, which is and. Our subordinating conjunction is because. So that tells me that I have an independent clause, he went to the store. Have another one, and he bought grapes. But then I have a dependent clause, because he made a fruit salad. Okay, so if I have 3 clauses, at least 2 independent and at least 1 dependent, that's a compound complex sentence. So it's important for you to memorize your lists of conjunctions as well as your formulas so that you know how to identify each type of sentence.